The Curse of the Egyptian King. One of the most memorable adventures I shared with Hercule Poirot was our investigation into a series of deaths connected with an Egyptian tomb. At first, the whole affair seemed mysterious, even frightening. Only later did I understand how carefully Poirot had read the signs from the very beginning. Soon after the famous discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb, another expedition made an important find near the pyramids of Giza. Sir John Willard, a respected British Egyptologist, and the rich American Mr. Bleibner uncovered burial chambers believed to belong to King Men-Hra, an ancient ruler about whom little was known. The newspapers were full of excitement, but the excitement soon turned to fear. Sir John Willard died suddenly of heart failure shortly after the tomb was opened. Immediately, the newspapers dragged out the old superstitious stories about the bad luck of Egyptian treasures. A week later, Mr. Bleibner died from blood poisoning caused by a small infected cut. Only days after that, Mr. Bleibner's nephew Rupert, after visiting his uncle in Egypt, shot himself in New York. 3 deaths, 1 tomb. People remember the unlucky mummy at the British Museum. The museum gently dismissed the idea, but the story took hold nevertheless. People started speaking of the curse of the Egyptian king. It was then that Poirot received a letter from Lady Willard, Sir John's widow, asking him to visit her in London. We went together. Lady Willard was calm but very frightened. She was not afraid for herself, but for her son, Sir Guy Willard, who had gone to Egypt to continue his father's work. "You may think me foolish," she said, "but I'm afraid this is not the end." Poirot listened carefully. His green eyes, sharp and watchful like a cat's, missed nothing. "Superstition," he said quietly, "is a powerful force." On the way home, I asked him what he meant. "I do not believe in curses," he explained, "but I believe people can use superstition as a weapon." Poirot sent a message to New York to ask about Rupert Bleibner. The reply was interesting. Rupert had lived a troubled life and often needed money. He had borrowed enough to travel to Egypt, saying he had a good friend there. However, his uncle refused to help him. Rupert returned to New York, angry and ashamed. Shortly afterwards, he killed himself. He left a letter in which he said he was a leper and an outcast and was better off dead. The next day, Poirot decided we must go to Egypt at once. The 4-day journey was difficult for him. The little man suffered throughout the sea voyage to Alexandria, then hated the heat of Cairo even more. What annoyed him the most was the sand. He brushed his clothes constantly and complained about his neat leather shoes getting ruined. We had to ride to the excavation camp on camels. I will pass over the spectacle of Poirot on a camel. Suffice it to say that he finished the journey on a donkey. At the excavation camp, we were greeted by Sir Guy Willard, who looked haggard but determined to continue his father's work. We also met Dr. Ames, the expedition doctor. He was confident and calm, and he laughed at any idea of curses. Another man, Mr. Harper, who had been the late Mr. Bleibner's secretary, seemed nervous and wanted to leave Egypt as soon as possible. Poirot asked many questions. Dr. Ames explained that Mr. Bleibner had cut his thumb, it became infected, and he died of blood poisoning. Young Rupert Bleibner had been unstable for years. There was no curse, it was all nonsense. Science explains everything, Dr. Ames added. Poirot looked at him closely, blinking his green cat-like eyes. "Science explains much," he said, but fear explains even more. That evening, the camp felt uneasy. The local workers were frightened. Hassan, the Willard family servant, warned Poirot that evil was nearby and begged him to take Sir Guy away. After dinner that night, something terrifying happened. A tall, silent figure walked between the tents and disappeared before we could get to him. It had the head of a dog, just like the carvings on the walls of the tomb. For a moment, I believed the curse was real. Sir Guy thought the apparition had gone into the secretary's tent. "No," said Poirot, shaking his head. "It has gone into the tent of Dr. Ames. It is Anubis, the god of departing souls," he added, crossing himself. Dr. Ames was very angry. "Someone is playing a trick," he said. Poirot said nothing. Back in our tent, Poirot drew strange signs in the sand and spoke seriously about protection from evil. Some people laughed, others were frightened. Later that night, Hassan brought Poirot a cup of chamomile tea. I stood at the door of our tent, looking over the desert while he drank. When he didn't reply to my comment about the beauty of desert life, I turned around and saw him lying on the bed, his face twisted in pain. I rushed out and across the camp to fetch Dr. Ames. When we returned, Poirot was sitting up, calm and smiling. "I did not drink the tea," he said. "I poured it into a bottle and put it in a safe place. It will be sent to a chemical analyst." At that moment, Dr. Ames's hand went to his mouth and the smell of something toxic filled the air. He had taken poison. He collapsed before we could send for medical help. "Another death," said Poirot gravely, "but the last one. Perhaps it is the best way. He had killed 2 people. I gaped at him in astonishment. But after we had searched through the papers in Dr. Ames's tent and found Rupert Bleibner's will, he explained everything. Years earlier, Rupert Bleibner had once made a will while drunk. In it, he left everything he owned, which he jokingly said would only be a lot of debts, to his friend Dr. Ames, who had once saved his life. Rupert never took this will seriously and forgot about it, but Dr. Ames had kept it and it was still legally valid. Sir John Willard's natural death gave him the idea. When Rupert came to Egypt asking his uncle for money, Dr. Ames saw his chance to become rich. He knew Rupert was frightened of disease, so he convinced him that his minor skin trouble was deadly leprosy. Depressed and miserable, Rupert went back to New York. Not doubting his friend's word and believing his life was over, he killed himself. In the meantime, Mr. Bleibner died because Dr. Ames had infected his wound on purpose. He didn't leave a will, so all his money would pass to his nephew and eventually to Dr. Ames. "And Anubis?" I asked. "Hassan wore the costume," Poirot said, "at my request. I didn't have any proof against Dr. Ames, and I saw the only way was to frighten him into action. He knew I'd asked Hassan for a cup of tea in bed and had slipped into his tent to poison the cup. Hassan saw him. Because there was no trial, the truth about this case was never made public. To this day, people still believe in an ancient curse rather than a heinous crime. This story was inspired by Agatha Christie's The Adventure of the Egyptian Tomb. It was first published in the British weekly magazine The Sketch in 1923. And now, let's go through some useful vocabulary you can take away from the story. A series of deaths. A series of deaths means several deaths happening one after another, often connected in some way. It's commonly used in crime stories and news reports. Example: the police investigated a series of deaths linked to the old hotel. Turned to fear. When something turns to fear, a feeling of excitement or hope changes into worry or panic. Example: what began as curiosity soon turned to fear. Drag out old stories. To drag out old stories means to bring up things from the past, often rumors or legends, especially when they cause trouble or fear. For example, the press dragged out old stories that everyone had almost forgotten. Take hold. If an idea takes hold, people start to believe it and repeat it, even if there is little proof. Example: once the rumor took hold, it was impossible to stop it spreading. A powerful force. A powerful force is something that strongly influences how people think or behave. Example: fear can be a powerful force in difficult situations. A troubled life. Someone who has lived a troubled life has experienced many problems, instability, or unhappiness. Example: he had lived a troubled life and struggled to find peace. Better off dead. Better off means in a better situation. Better off dead is a very dark expression used when someone believes their life has no value anymore. For example, he wrongly believed his family would be better off without him. Dismiss an idea. To dismiss an idea means to refuse to take it seriously or to reject it without much discussion. For example, the scientist dismissed the theory as nonsense. Play a trick. To play a trick means to deceive someone, either as a joke or as part of a plan. For example, at first they thought someone was playing a trick on them. The truth was never made public. If something is never made public, ordinary people never find out about it. This phrase sounds quite formal and is often used in the reports or documentaries. For example, many details of the case were never made public. Before we finish, I'd love to hear what you think about today's story. Here are a few questions for you to reflect on or to share your thoughts in the comments. Do you think people are more afraid of curses or of things they don't fully understand? Have you ever seen fear or superstition influence people's actions in real life? When you hear a mysterious story, do you look for a logical explanation first, or do you enjoy the mystery? And next time, we leave ancient tombs and deadly curses behind and step into something far cozier, a quiet country house, a loving mother, and a weekend visit that brings noise, laughter, and exhaustion. In episode 5, The Weekend Visitors, we explore the thin line between loving and overwhelming and discover that even the happiest reunions need a little peace and quiet.